You paid for me. Now do it. He got her pregnant, and then she became his wife. The Pearl Arcade glared with hard white light. Counters lined the floor in a precise grid. Security pylons blinked blue at ankle height. Visitors moved in calm loops with paper cups and neutral faces. A raised glass platform stood at the center. On it, a green-skinned woman with long red hair faced the hall. A thin storm veil framed her face. A short mica wrap sat at her hips. A placard read Household Contract, Debt Recovery. She watched the exits, not the bidders. Her eyes tracked doors, guards, and the narrow service ramp at the back of the dais. She kept her breathing even. She did not hunch. She did not plead. Keir entered from the east corridor and stopped just inside the threshold. Harbor Registrar, former scout, 36, broad-shouldered, black hair cut close, a field jacket over a plain shirt. He scanned the room the way he always did. Doors, cameras, guard posts, the shortest line to the stairwell. He counted 8 officers, 2 plainclothes, 1 camera-blind spot behind a pillar. He disliked the place on principle. The arcade mixed desserts and debt slips. It sold order as a spectacle. He was here for a routine compliance check with a secondary aim he did not advertise. His job was to keep clean records at the quay. His personal rule was to stop abuses that hid behind paperwork. The Pearl Arcade had a habit of adding handling and care fees to bond transfers. Those add-ons converted a release into a sale. Tonight he wanted the docket, the live prices, and a chance to block the padding if he caught on the floor. The auctioneer spoke into a slim mic, standard conversion structure. Base plus presentation fee, reformat fee, courier escort, and storage. Keir stepped to the counter under the dais and lifted his palm slate. He opened the statute and read the line that mattered. Section 12, line 9. Transfer at recorded principal without accessories. Remove add-ons. The clerk beside the auctioneer flinched. The auctioneer kept smiling, but his eyes shifted to the screen. Fees dropped by half, then snapped to the legal minimum. The crowd murmured. Some people looked annoyed by the interruption. Most looked relieved to be told what to think. The woman on the dais watched Keir with steady attention. No plea in it, just calculation. He noticed her hands, fingers flat on the rail, nails short, a faint tremor in the left hand when the crowd behind him pressed closer. Fear present, controlled. Bid stands at base, the auctioneer said. Keir keyed payment. Release the bond, he said. Not the person, the debt. The clerk printed the strip. Keir took it. He met the woman's eyes. I'm Keir, Harbor Registrar. Walk beside me. If tonight isn't what you want, I file an annulment at first light. She stepped off the dais without help. Up close, he saw new details. A small bruise near the collarbone, a healed cut at the hairline, tenderness in the way she favored her right foot. The storm veil did nothing for warmth. He shrugged out of his jacket and held it open. She slid into it without a word. You paid for me, she said, voice low and even. Now do it. Do the rest. First thing I do, he said, is give you a door that locks from your side. They left through a glass corridor. Below, black water showed slow bands of blue from bioluminescent wakes. The tide elevators hummed under the floor. The air smelled like salt and sanitizer. She kept half a step behind him and a little to his left. He registered the choice. She wanted space and a clear view of him. Name, he said. Nyara Sorrel. Used before today. Yes. Kept or taken from you. Taken. He nodded once. We will put it back in the system. You talk like a form. I file for a living, he said. It's how I win fights I can't afford to lose. They reached Berthway 17, a narrow stairwell over the quay. His loft was compact and exact. A small bed against an interior wall. A table by an oval window. A rail of storm linen shirts on hooks. A kettle on low heat. Tide maps pinned above the desk with color tags. He paused at the door to let her see the whole room. No one else lives here, he said. No one else has keys. He set a clean towel in the washroom and turned the water hot. He placed an oversized shirt and a sea blue shawl at the foot of the bed. Wash first, he said. Door stays ajar unless you close it. She studied him for a beat, reading tone and posture. She took the shirt and towel and stepped inside. He waited in the main room with the door open and his back to it. Water ran. Pipes clanked. He cracked the window to vent the steam and let in harbor air. He worked the galley. Pan on. Reef steak strips into hot metal with coarse salt. Revel butter on top. Zyron roots sliced thin, brown to the edge. He set a tin mug, then a second. Furlan seed, coffee pressed slow. He cut 2 slices of flatbread and warmed them on the rim of the pan. He dropped utensils in a straight line because his hands wanted order. Nyara emerged in his shirt with damp hair combed back. The shirt hung to mid-thigh and pulled slightly on one shoulder. Her eyes moved over the room in a careful sweep. Window, lock, desk, stove, bed him. She sat. He slid the plate to her and sat across. She ate hard at first, then slowed when her body caught up. He saw the change. Shoulders dropped a notch. Jaw loosened. She chased the last butter with the edge of bread and set the fork down. "Thank you," she said. "You're welcome," he said. He watched her right hand. The tremor had faded. The bruise at her collarbone looked shallow, 2 days old. Her gaze was clear. She hid fatigue well, but not hunger. He made a note to increase portions. "Why were you on that platform?" he asked. "My employer defaulted," she said. "Debt reclamation flagged me as a transferable asset. Witness tags in my file were wiped. I reported bribes at the debt office last cycle. Someone made me a debtor instead of a witness." He listened without interrupting. He opened his slate and checked the release. The metadata showed a scrubbed field with a ghosted witness code. He had seen this pattern before. Not often. Often enough. "My audit flag brought me to the arcade," he said. "I run surprise checks. I also block padding when I can. That's tonight's mission." "Your real mission," she said. "I keep the quay clean. I prefer clean to dramatic." "You also prefer people to be people," she said. "Yes," he said. "Then here's mine," she said. "Stay alive. Get my name back. Eat hot food. Sleep in a bed. Stop shaking every time a guard looks at me." He nodded. The list was clear. He stood and took a small brass key from a hook by the door. He tested the bedroom lock twice, then pressed the key in her palm. "This is yours," he said. "Door locks from your side. Keep it where you want." She closed her fingers around it. The reaction came fast and physical. Breath caught. Shoulders straightened. She looked angry and relieved at the same time. The anger was for the weeks without a key. The relief was for this one. "You said you'd file an annulment at first light if I wanted out," she said. "I meant it." "I don't," she said. He nodded once. "Then I register your name on the birth chit in the morning. It puts you in the system as a resident. It makes the rest easier." "You make everything sound simple," she said. "It is not simple," he said. "It is steps." She stood. The change in her posture was small but obvious. She moved like a person relearning control of a room. She came close enough that he could feel the heat from the wash on her skin. She touched his collar and stopped, measuring his response. He stood still. He let her set the pace. He kept his hands at his sides until her left hand slid around his waist and rested at his back. "No pity," she said. "You won't get it," he said. "You will get me. Direct. Not gentle when you don't want gentle. Careful when you do." Her mouth twitched. Not a smile. A decision. She pressed closer and kissed him once, testing for hesitation. He answered with steady pressure. His hand rose to her hip, firm and deliberate. The other cupped the base of her skull to support her neck. He watched her eyes for doubt. He saw none. She watched his hands for restraint. She saw it and moved in. The chair leg tapped the table. The tin mug rattled. They both laughed under their breath. He turned the lamp down. The window stayed open to the harbor. The key remained in her hand. She held it like a marker. "Say it," she said. "I want you," he said. "Good," she said. They crossed the small room without hurry. He lifted her onto the edge of the bed with care, not ceremony. She tugged him forward by the shirt. He kissed her face, jaw, throat, pausing to read her breathing and the way her hands changed pressure. She pulled him closer with both legs and met him without shyness. When he asked, slow or fast, she answered, "Start slow," and then changed her mind and said, "Faster," and he adjusted without comment because listening was the point. The scene narrowed to warm skin, quiet breaths, and the relief of being chosen, not displayed. The door clicked. The lock turned from her side. The rest stayed private. Later, they lay on their backs with the window cracked to the sound of water. Harbor air moved across the room. The kettle ticked as it cooled. Keir watched the ceiling and let his heart rate settle. His thoughts ran in straight lines. He would register her residence at dawn. He would pull the bond docket for the night and freeze the ledger copy. He would get witness statements from the Dock 6 cook and the quay sweeper who had watched the auction floor. He would file a protection note to block any attempt to convert her status back to debt. He would push a quiet complaint about the scrubbed witness flag and demand an internal review. Steps, not speeches. Nyara shifted and propped herself on an elbow. Her hair stuck to her neck in damp strands. Her eyes were clearer than they had been under the arcade lights. "What happens if they try to reclassify me?" she asked. "I put your registered residence and tonight's release under a cross file," he said. "Any change triggers a review. They will have to call me in. I will bring the ledger and the witnesses. They like clean paper. I will give them clean paper. They will fold. You talk like you've done this." "I have," he said. "Not often. Enough." She studied his face in the low light. His expression did not change much, but the set of his jaw softened when she looked at him for a long time. He was not nervous. He was alert. He carried the same tension he carried on night inspections. Not dread, readiness. "What do they teach you in the Scout Corps that you still use?" she asked. "Count before you move," he said. "Keep quiet when others talk too much. Put the tool you need where your hand will find it in the dark. Leave a room better than you found it." "And what did you unlearn?" she said. "Swagger," he said. "It gets people hurt." She nodded. The answer fit the man in front of her. She lay back down and set her palm on his chest. The touch was simple and heavy with intent. Not possession, confirmation. Her breathing slowed. The tiny tremor in her hand did not return. "Why did you come to the arcade tonight?" she asked. The real reason. He considered the honest version and gave it. "Compliance patrol," he said. "And I was tired of watching them turn people into invoices when no one in the room would say the line out loud." She absorbed that. "I went there because I thought a stranger would do one clear thing. Take me home, use me, and end it. No more choice. No more waiting. I wanted the noise to stop." "How is this?" he asked. "Quieter," she said. "Louder when it matters." He nodded. The phrasing matched how the room felt. Quiet room. Loud choices. "What happens in the morning?" she asked. "I cook," he said. "I file. I take you to the Civil Dome. We put your name where it belongs on the ledgers. After that, we eat again." "What do we eat?" she said. "Meat," he said. "As much as you want." She smiled at that. It landed harder than any promise. She shifted closer and tucked her face under his chin. "Stay," she said. "I'm here," he said. He listened to her breath settle into long, even pulls. The harbor answered with slow water and a distant clank from a crane. He kept one arm around her and one hand on the edge of the mattress, a small habit from too many nights on moving decks. His mind moved through the checklist again, then let go. The lock stayed turned her way. The window stayed open to the tide. The night held. Morning crept in through the harbor glass, pale and cold. The light slid over the edge of Keir's desk, across the tide maps, and reached the bed where Nyara still slept. Her red hair spilled across his pillow like a flag after rain. The shirt she wore was half unbuttoned, rising and falling with each slow breath. For a few seconds, the city outside didn't exist. Only the sound of water striking the quay pylons below and the faint hum of dock turbines starting their cycle. Keir sat up quietly. His body ached the way it did after long patrols, half exhaustion, half memory. He watched her for a moment, reading the relaxed lines of her face, the absence of the tension she carried when they met. Then he rose, dressed in silence, and moved to the small galley. He brewed Frolen seed coffee and cooked Tide Boar strips on the iron pan. The smell filled the loft, heavy and real. He was halfway through cleaning the table when Nyara stirred and sat up, blinking against the light. "You cook like someone who's been hungry," she said, voice hoarse. "I have," he replied without turning. "Once was enough." She slipped from the bed, bare feet soft on the wooden floor. "What happens now?" "We register you," he said. "Your name goes back into the civil record under resident status. No more erased lines." "You think it'll hold?" she asked. It will if I anchor it to mine, he said. That's how you keep things from vanishing here. She came closer, studying him while he poured her coffee. You talk like everything's just paperwork. He looked at her, steady. In this city, paperwork decides who's real. That answer stayed with her. She took the mug and drank, trying to read the man who had undone her chains with bureaucratic precision. She still didn't understand him. Why he'd acted, what he wanted, or what part of him believed this would end well. He felt her gaze. You have questions, he said. I have too many, she admitted. You're a harbor registrar. What were you doing in an auction hall? Compliance duty, he said. But the short answer? I want to see how far the system would bend before it snapped. And me? She asked quietly. Am I proof it can still bend? He met her eyes. You're proof it's still worth trying. She didn't answer right away. She looked down at her hands, at the faint imprint of the key still pressed into her palm. You didn't touch the bond transfer last night. What? He leaned against the counter. Because I didn't buy you, he said simply. I bought back your right to choose what happens next. Her throat tightened at that, and she turned away, pretending to check the view through the window. The sea stretched black and endless, dotted with the lights of patrol drones gliding between pylons. They didn't know about her. Not yet. You think I can walk outside and no one will know? She asked. They'll know you knew, Keir said. They just won't know from where. He handed her a folded ID slip, temporary, unregistered, but good enough to move through the lower docks. You'll keep your head down until the file replicates in the registry system, he said. Nyara unfolded it slowly. Her new image stared back, still her face, still her name. It feels false, she said. It's the first real thing you've had in weeks, he said. She exhaled, shaky, almost laughing. You talk like a soldier pretending not to be one. I was, he said. Once. Long time ago. I learned more from the records I wrote than the orders I followed. That answer filled the silence between them. It explained his discipline, his calm, his absence of arrogance. It also explained the sadness that flickered in him when he thought she wasn't looking. They ate together at the small table, the quiet thick with things unsaid. Afterward, he brought out a portable scanner and pressed her hand against the pad. The device beeped once, registering pulse, skin tone, and biosignature. This uploads you as provisional resident of Birthway 17, he said. No debt tags, no ownership flags. Just like that, she said. It'll flag in the system within 6 hours, he said. Until then, we lay low. She watched him close the scanner. You plan everything, she said. You don't even look surprised by what you've done. Surprise is how people get killed, he said. He turned back to the console, logged the new entry, and saved it to 3 separate backups. Nyara studied his movements, the methodical order, the absolute focus. Everything about him felt like an answer to her chaos. But she also saw something else, hesitation. The way his hands paused a fraction too long before hitting submit. You're worried, she said. I'm not worried, he said. I'm calculating. Calculating what? How many people noticed what I did last night? He looked up at her then. No one interfered, but someone always reviews the feed. Her stomach nodded. So we're not safe. He shook his head. Not unsafe. Just watched. She took that in, then stood and walked to him. You risked your job for me. I risked paperwork, he said. Different thing. She touched his wrist, forcing his eyes to meet hers. Don't make it smaller than it is. He held her gaze, the line of his jaw tightening. All right, he said quietly. Then it's big, and it's done. For now. The sound of dock bells echoed through the walls, the start of the work shift. Keir set his mug down, grabbed his field jacket, and turned to her. You stay here today. Use the wash, eat, rest. Don't answer knocks unless it's me. She frowned. Where are you going? Harbor Records, he said. If anyone asks about the audit, I have to look calm. You'd be surprised how much chaos you can hide if you look calm. She nodded but didn't move. Keir, if they come? They won't, he said. And if they do, that door still locks from your side. He opened the door halfway, paused, and looked back once. Keep the lights low. Then he left. The loft grew quiet again. Nyara walked to the window and watched him move down the quay, merging with the line of workers in gray coats. For the first time in weeks, she didn't feel like a thing waiting to be processed, But freedom felt heavier than she expected. She turned the key in the lock, testing it, hearing the click, and for a moment she smiled. Outside, a patrol glider passed low over the docks, scanning the ledgers. It didn't stop. Not yet. Back inside, the kettle hissed on the stove, a thin sound in the silence. Nyara poured another cup of coffee, wrapped the shawl tighter around her shoulders, and sat at the table. Her eyes traced the tide maps pinned above Kier's desk. Routes, coordinates, a name she didn't recognize scribbled in the corner. NK-74. Witness file lost. Her hand froze on the mug. Someone else had been erased before her. She stared at the note for a long time, her breath slow and even, her mind already forming questions she would ask when he returned. But deep down, she already knew Kier's mission hadn't started with her, and it wouldn't end here. Rain had begun sometime after dawn. The drops struck the glass window in slow, irregular beats, tracing pale streaks down the pane. Nyara stood barefoot at the edge of the bed, watching the water thread down into the harbor below. The smell of salt and metal mixed with the faint aroma of the coffee Kier had left warming on the stove. He'd been gone for hours. She moved through the small loft quietly, exploring the way someone does when trying to understand the person who rescued them. Everything was clean and deliberate. His desk was arranged with military precision, tide maps pinned in rows, ledgers stacked in equal height, a small wooden box locked with a simple latch. On the side table near the bed, a folded holophoto glowed faintly. She touched it. It showed Kier, in uniform, younger, standing beside another man in front of a damaged shuttle. Both had the same sharp eyes, the same disciplined stance. The other man's uniform badge read Ryan Arlen. The surname made her pause. Brother, maybe. She hadn't asked about family. She realized he hadn't mentioned one. The kettle hissed softly. She poured herself coffee and sat at the table, pulling her knees close. Outside, the sea thudded against the pilings with a sound that never stopped, something constant in a life that had lost all rhythm. When the lock clicked at the door, she looked up fast. Kier entered, coat damp, expression unreadable. He dropped a folder on the table and peeled off his gloves. "You found something," she said. He nodded once, shaking rain from his sleeves. "I checked the audit chain. Your file was accessed 3 times in the last cycle. The last edit came from an address inside the debt reclamation office. Someone still cares enough to watch me," she said. "Someone wants the record to stay dead," he replied. He sat opposite her, opening the folder. Inside were printed copies, raw data from the registry. He pointed to a blurred line of code. "This was your witness tag. They replaced it with a debt identifier. Lazy job, but effective. The ledger thinks you're an object, not a name." Her voice came tight. "And you can fix it?" "Yes," he said. "But if I file it wrong, it triggers review, and review means exposure." She stared at the pages. "What happens to you if they notice?" "They'll call it conflict of interest, suspension, maybe termination. You say that like it doesn't bother you." He gave a small, humorless smile. "I stopped thinking about job security the day I saw how easy it was to erase someone with a single keystroke." She studied him, the hard edges under his calm surface. "The man in your photo, your brother?" He blinked once, caught off guard. "You looked around?" "Yes," she said, not apologizing. "Who is he?" "Ryan, my younger brother. He died on a patrol run off Saravine Station." He paused. "That's when I transferred out of active service and took registry work. I thought if I couldn't stop people from dying, I could at least keep their names from being deleted afterward." The answer landed heavier than he meant it to. Nyara looked down at her cup. "You keep fixing ghosts," she said softly. "Sometimes it helps the living," he said. A silence stretched, but not an uncomfortable one. The kind that built trust by what wasn't said. She noticed his hand still on the file, steady, but the knuckles pale from pressure. "What will you do with that?" she asked. "Recreate your record manually. Rebuild your timeline from witness logs and cross-checks. We do it quietly at night. It'll take days. And after, he said, we make it permanent. You'll be registered as an independent citizen. You'll have credit rights, housing, rations, work permissions." She blinked, stunned by the idea. A normal life. As normal as Oraline Quay allows, he said. She laughed once, soft and real. That's a small miracle. He looked at her then, really looked, seeing her not as a problem to solve, but as someone alive in his space, wearing his shirt, drinking his coffee, leaving traces of herself on the air. He hadn't let anyone stay this long in years. He didn't plan to, but plans had already failed him once. The lights dimmed as an air car passed outside the window. The reflection threw their faces together in the glass. Hers uncertain, his tired. They'll think you're helping me for personal reasons, she said, breaking the silence. They wouldn't be wrong, he said, quiet. The way he said it, steady, almost factual, made something shift inside her. Her pulse rose. She didn't move closer, not yet, but the space between them tightened like a drawn line. She stood first, pacing to the window. You risk everything for someone you met yesterday, she said. Why? Because I saw the same look in you that I had after Ryan's death, he said. The look that says you stopped expecting fairness. And when people stop expecting fairness, the system wins. Nyara turned slowly, her face serious now. You think this will save me? I think it'll give you back the right to decide what saving means. He stood, walked past her, and poured himself coffee. The closeness stirred again. Not dramatic, not rushed, just two people standing close enough to feel each other's breathing. You can stay as long as you want, he said. But when your record's clean, the choice is yours. Stay or go. She looked up at him. And if I stay, then I stop pretending this is just paperwork. The admission hung between them. She didn't answer, but the tension broke the way held breath does when it finally escapes. She reached for his wrist, holding it briefly. His pulse jumped under her fingers. Tell me what to do, she said quietly. Eat, rest, heal, he said. We start rebuilding your file tonight. Her eyes held his. You mean our file, she said. He nodded once. Ours. That night, the harbor outside fell into heavy rain. Kier's small desk became their workspace. He typed, she dictated, filling the gaps in her erased life. Dates, names, witnesses, small details she hadn't said aloud in months. Every line restored a piece of her that had been taken. Sometimes she faltered, voice shaking, and he paused, waiting without pressure. When she steadied again, he continued typing. Hours passed like that. The room filled with the sound of rain, keys clicking, and quiet breathing. Near midnight, he printed the draft and handed it to her. Check it, he said. She read each line, her eyes tracing her own name over and over. When she reached the bottom, she pressed her hand flat on the page. I thought I'd never see this again, she whispered. He didn't answer. He was watching her hand on the paper, the tremor gone, the quiet pride there instead. She looked up, eyes wet but steady. You brought me back. You were never gone, he said. Just hidden. The storm rolled outside, thunder low and distant. She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. The touch was small, almost accidental, but it said more than words. For the first time since she'd been freed, Nyara stopped shaking. And for the first time in years, Kier let someone close without pulling away. The lights flickered from the storm, then steadied. The sound of the rain softened. The city above them kept running, unaware that somewhere on Birthway 17, two people were quietly rewriting the rules that had erased her, and everything about their lives was about to change because of it. The storm lasted through the night. When morning came, the rain had stopped, but the city still wore its gray light like armor. The harbor was quieter than usual, muffled by fog that curled between the cranes and pylons. Inside the loft, Kier stood at the sink, rinsing the coffee pot with slow, deliberate movements. He hadn't slept. Behind him, Nyara stirred on the bed, the blanket slipping down to her waist. Her red hair was tangled from sleep, her breathing even. She opened her eyes when she heard him move and sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. You didn't sleep, she said. I had to encrypt your file, he replied. If they scan my terminal, they'll see a maintenance log, not a person's life. She watched him for a moment. His voice was steady, but his eyes looked darker, edged with fatigue. How long until it's permanent? She asked. 48 hours, he said. The system replicates every 2 cycles. Once your file hits 3 independent servers, No one can delete you without public notice. And until then, you don't leave this room." She frowned slightly. "You think they'll come for me?" "I think someone will notice a ghost reappeared in their data," he said. "They'll ask questions. They'll start small, cross-checks internal pings. Then they'll send a clerk to verify anomalies." He turned and met her eyes. "You'll stay hidden until I know who's asking." She nodded, but her voice softened. "You talk like this isn't your first time." "It isn't," he said quietly. He went to the desk and opened the lockbox she had noticed before. Inside were 3 sealed data chips and several old identity bands, worn, scratched, belonging to different people. She recognized one name. "Tessa Morek," she read aloud. "Is she alive?" Kier's jaw tightened. She was a dock worker accused of data theft. Her file disappeared. I tried to restore it, but they caught the trace. "What happened?" She vanished from the registry. A week later, her room was sealed. The silence that followed was heavy. Nyara stood slowly, tightening the blanket around herself. "And you still risk this for me?" He looked at her over his shoulder. "If I don't, someone else will disappear the same way. I'm tired of that." The honesty in his tone unsettled her more than any threat could. She walked to the table, sat down, and began eating the cold reef steak left from the night before. The taste was strong, salty. She didn't speak until halfway through the plate. "What happens when they find out you helped me?" "They won't," he said. "I know how the system hides things. It was built to bury mistakes, not protect them." "Then what happens when this is over?" she asked quietly. "When I'm legal again? You'll be free to go anywhere," he said. She swallowed and set down the fork. "And if I don't want to go anywhere?" He froze at the question. For a moment, the air thickened between them. Then he turned off the sink, wiped his hands, and faced her. "Then we'll talk about what staying means," he said. She nodded but didn't push. She could feel something shifting in him, a pull he tried to hide under discipline. The distance he maintained wasn't indifference, it was self-control. And that control was cracking. By midday, he was working at the desk again. Lines of code scrolled across his slate as he built her witness log piece by piece. She sat nearby, wrapped in a blanket, helping when he needed details. "Who was the dead officer who processed your file?" he asked. "Director Varn," she said after a pause. Thin face, gray eyes. "He asked me to sign a compliance statement after my testimony. I refused. That was the last time I saw my real record." Kier's fingers stilled. "Varn, I know that name." She tilted her head. "Ow!" He used to audit harbor exports. Was transferred after a corruption inquiry. I filed part of that case. "You filed it?" "Yes," he said, and it was buried 3 days later. Her lips parted slightly. "So this isn't just about me, is it?" He looked up from the screen. "No, it never was." The revelation hung in the air like static. She understood now why his work was so careful, why he never slept. He wasn't saving her to feel noble. He was finishing something he'd failed to stop before. That night, the fog thickened outside. Distant lights blurred to halos. The loft felt smaller, the hum of the city quieter. Nyara sat by the window, knees drawn up, watching the faint glow of the docks. Kier was at the table, still typing, a single lamp casting light on his hands. "Do you ever stop?" she asked softly. "When it's done," he said, "you'll burn yourself out." "Better me than you," he said without looking up. She stood and went to him, resting her hand on his shoulder. "You can't fix everything, not even this city." He stopped typing. "I can fix this one thing." "You can't fix me," she said. He looked at her hand, still on his shoulder. "I don't want to fix you," he said. "I want you alive. That's all." She swallowed hard. "You say that like it's simple." "It is," he said, standing. "Everything else complicates it." She didn't step back. He was close now, close enough for her to feel the faint warmth of his breath. The quiet between them carried weight. Fear, need, the impossible balance between safety and desire. "You shouldn't look at me like that," she whispered. "How am I looking?" "Like you already decided." He studied her face, the flicker of defiance in her eyes, the tremor she tried to hide. "Maybe I have," he said. Her fingers brushed his jaw before she pulled away. She turned toward the window again, her voice low. "If we do this, they'll see it as proof you used me." Then we'll let them see it as proof I stood by you, he said. The directness of his tone made her heartbeat stumble. She turned back to him. You're not afraid? I've been afraid before, he said. It's never stopped me. He reached for the slate and powered it down. The screen went dark, reflecting both their faces in the same glass. For a moment, neither moved. Then she stepped closer again. He met her halfway. There was no rush, no pretense, only the unspoken understanding that both had run out of reasons to hold back. His hand slid behind her neck, fingers steady, his touch careful but claiming. She rose on her toes, and their foreheads touched first, then their lips met, slow, deliberate, real. When they broke apart, she didn't move away. You'll regret this, she said softly. Only if you do, he said. I won't. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, fading into the fog. Keir didn't look away from her. Then stay close tonight, he said. Tomorrow, we make your name permanent. She nodded. And if they come before then? He reached for the key, still hanging by the door, and placed it back in her hand. Then you lock the door and trust that I'll make it back. Her eyes met his, the unspoken answer clear. She would. The rain began again, soft against the glass. The world outside stayed indifferent, but inside the small room, something fragile had turned solid. Trust, maybe, or something close enough to survive what was coming next. Morning light crept through the fog, pale and filtered. The tide had risen during the night, waves lapping against the lower pylons of Birthway 17. The sound was soft, almost rhythmic, steady enough to mask the tension that filled Keir's small loft. He stood by the table, finishing a report that wasn't really a report, a decoy file he'd prepared to make it look like he was auditing old harbor cargo manifests. Behind him, Nyara was getting dressed, tying the shawl over his shirt, her movements slower than usual, thoughtful. Neither had slept much. The air between them felt different now. Familiar, close, but edged with worry. Every sound outside made them glance toward the door. What if the system flags are logging? Nyara asked quietly, fastening the last knot. It won't, Keir said, not looking up. I used an old mirror ID. It routes through the Civic Archive. Even if they check, it will look like a delayed sync from last week. She walked closer, watching him work. His movements were precise, almost mechanical. His discipline calmed her and scared her at the same time. You sound like you've done this before. He looked up at her, one eyebrow raised. You already asked me that yesterday. I didn't get an honest answer. He paused, leaning back in chair. 2 years ago, I tried to restore another erase file. Someone who testified against the Federation Procurement Board. The request bounced. The witness disappeared. No trace. That's when I learned how to hide a record properly. She studied him. And it cost you something. His eyes flicked toward the small holophoto of his brother on the desk. Yeah, he said softly. Everything that still felt like faith. The kettle hissed behind them. He poured 2 mugs of Furlan coffee and slid one to her. Drink, he said. Today's going to run long. She took it, fingers brushing his. For a second, the fear that had stalked her since the arcade felt smaller. This man didn't speak promises, but he kept them. That was rarer than kindness in Oraline Quay. What happens when you file it today? She asked. When it becomes permanent? He sighed. They'll notice. Maybe not today, maybe not this week. But someone will see a file that reappeared after being erased. They'll dig. That's why I'll have to talk fast and look calm. And me? You'll be a resident of Birthway 17, he said, and my domestic co-signer. She blinked. That sounds like marriage. He gave a half smile. On paper, it's a protection clause. You get shielded under my registry until your independent credentials go live. 2 weeks, maybe less. She nodded, absorbing that. So the city will think we're married? He met her eyes. Yes. She smiled faintly, half amused, half uneasy. And you're fine with that? I've been called worse things, he said. That drew a small laugh out of her, the first real laugh since the arcade. It sounded foreign and human at the same time, but the moment didn't last. A sharp beep cut through the room. His terminal flashed red. Inquiry request, Civil Dome. Keir froze. They're already checking. Nyara's shoulders stiffened. What does that mean? It means they saw something they shouldn't have, he said, typing fast. Someone's tracking the witness logs manually. That's not protocol, it's personal. She stepped closer, lowering her voice. You think it's Varn? Could be, he said. He'd want to make sure the case stayed buried. He pulled out the data chip from the desk, the one that held her record. We're backing up the file offline, he said. If the system collapses it again, we'll still have proof you existed. Where will you hide it? She asked. He opened the maintenance hatch under the bed, revealing a narrow compartment lined with insulation and data shielding. Here, he said, signal dead zone. No scan can find it. Nyara knelt beside him, watching as he slid the chip inside. Her hand brushed his wrist, steadying him, but also grounding herself. You've thought of everything. He met her eyes, his voice lower now. I've thought of what happens if I fail. The admission caught her off guard. He rarely spoke like that. Open, unguarded. She wanted to tell him not to blame himself for everything. But before she could, his communicator pinged again. A message scrolled across the screen. Registry supervisor requests your presence at the Civil Dome. Immediate. He shut off the device, jaw tightening. That's Varn's doing, he said. You can't go, she said quickly. If I don't, they'll come here, he said. And if they come here, they'll find you. He stepped into the small wardrobe, pulled out his clean field jacket, and strapped on his ID band. You'll stay put, he said firmly. If the power drops, don't panic. It means they're scanning. Keep the door locked. Kier. He turned, stepping close enough that she had to tilt her chin up to meet his gaze. I'll be back, he said. I promise you that. She swallowed, unable to speak. He hesitated, then did something he hadn't done before. He cupped her face with both hands and pressed his forehead to hers. No matter what they say, you don't open this door for anyone but me, he whispered. Her hands came up, gripping his wrists. Be careful, she said. He nodded once, pulled back, and left without another word. The moment the door shut, the loft fell silent except for the faint hum of the tide turbines outside. Nyara stood frozen in place, trying to slow her heartbeat. Her eyes drifted to the holophoto on his desk again. Kier and his brother, standing in front of that shuttle. She remembered what he said about failing once before. Now she understood. He wasn't saving her just out of duty. He was fighting the same system that took his brother and his faith. Hours passed. The city outside grew brighter, then dimmed again as clouds rolled in. Nyara tried to distract herself by cleaning, by checking the locks, by rereading the pages of her restored file. But the silence pressed harder. Then, footsteps in the corridor. Slow, measured. She froze. The footsteps stopped outside the door. A pause. Then a voice, calm, official. Registrar Kier, Arlen. This is civil oversight. We have questions about your audit records. Please open the door. Her breath caught. The voice wasn't Kier's. She looked at the lock, the key in her hand, just like he said. The footsteps didn't move. Registrar, are you inside? The voice repeated. Nyara backed away, heart pounding. The floor creaked under her bare feet. She didn't answer. After a few seconds, the sound faded. Whoever it was, they moved on, or pretended to. She waited another full minute before breathing again. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance. The tide hit the pylons harder, water spraying against the glass. She moved to the window and stared out at the city lights trembling through the rain. Somewhere beyond that fog, Kier was walking into the dome, into a meeting that could expose everything. She whispered his name once, as if saying it would steady the air. Then she sat down at the table, staring at the sealed maintenance hatch under the bed, the one hiding her proof of existence, and realized something she hadn't before. If Kier didn't return, she couldn't just wait. She'd have to finish what he started. The Civil Dome loomed above the harbor like a bleached shell, smooth and cold under the steady rain. Kier's boots left shallow prints on the white stairs as he climbed toward the upper registry entrance. His badge glowed faintly at his wrist. Inside, the corridors were too quiet, clean lines, glass walls, and the sound of filtered air. He knew this place too well. Every inspection, every audit, every lie that passed for a system. The reception clerk, a young man with a practiced smile, scanned Kier's band and hesitated. Registrar Arlen, he said, Supervisor Varn is waiting in Chamber 4. Of course he was. Kier nodded once and entered. The chamber door slid shut behind him with a muted click. Inside, Varn stood at the far end of a long glass table. Thin, gray-eyed, his uniform perfectly pressed. The same man Nyara had described. Kier, Varn said smoothly. You've been busy. Kier didn't sit. Your message said immediate. What's the issue? Varn gestured to a holographic display that hovered over the table. An anomaly. A deleted record just reappeared, attached to your workstation ID. Odd coincidence. Kier met his gaze evenly. I restored an archived witness file from a flag docket. It happens when the sync cues get misaligned. Misaligned? Varn's tone sharpened. You expect me to believe a ghost file resurrected itself through normal replication? I expect you to check the audit trail, Kier said, voice flat. You'll see the checksum doesn't match any live tampering. If I was hiding something, I'd use clean signatures. Varn smiled thinly. You always were clever with words. Maybe too clever. Kier said nothing. He let the silence stretch until it felt like pressure in the room. Varn looked at him, waiting for discomfort. He didn't get any. Finally, the supervisor leaned forward. You served once, didn't you? Federation Scout Corps, Logistics Division. Until Saravine Station, Kier said. Varn's eyes flickered with interest. That explains the discipline, but not the defiance. Kier's jaw tightened. What do you want, Varn? The older man studied him for a long moment. You restored a record belonging to a former debt classification subject, Nyara Sorrel. I reviewed her file. It was erased under judicial order for security reasons. Yet here she is again, alive in the system. How does that happen? Kier met his gaze steady. Because someone deleted her illegally. Varn tilted his head. You have proof. I have the checksum from the original ledger. And a witness tag buried in the metadata. You know what that means. The supervisor's smile vanished. Careful, Arlen. That sounds like an accusation. It's not, Kier said. It's math. For a brief second, the two men stood perfectly still. The hum of the ventilation filled the gap. Then Varn stepped closer, lowering his voice. You think you can fix this city by correcting a few lines of code? You think the law cares about your moral bookkeeping? I don't care what it cares about, Kier said. I care what it records. Varn's tone softened, almost friendly. You're not the first to try this, you know. Others thought they could save the forgotten. They ended up erased themselves. Kier didn't flinch. Then maybe the system's running out of space to bury people. That earned him a long stare. Then Varn straightened and adjusted his cuffs. Fine, you've made your statement. The Civic Review Board will decide what happens next. Kier's muscles tensed. Meaning you're suspended pending investigation. Hand over your credentials. Kier held Varn's gaze for a second longer, then unclipped his ID band and set on the table. His hand brushed against the surface of the chip hidden inside his sleeve, Nyara's file copy. He felt its small weight against his skin, invisible to the scanners. You'll get a notice by tomorrow, Varn said. Until then, don't access any terminals. Don't leave the district. Kier nodded once, turned, and left. He didn't look back. Outside, the air hit colder. The dome door shut behind him with a heavy hiss. He pulled his hood up, blending into the flow of dock workers heading toward the elevators. The first wave of fear hit, not for himself, but for Nyara. He needed to reach her before they did. The walk back felt longer than it should have. The harbor below shimmered with oil and rain. He moved fast through the narrow lanes of Berthway 17, hands in his pockets, every instinct telling him to stay invisible. When he reached the loft, the door was still locked. Relief flashed, brief, fragile. He keyed the door open. Nyara was sitting at the table, wrapped in a shawl, eyes wide. The moment she saw his face, she stood. They came, she said. 2 men. They knocked, said they were from Oversight. I didn't answer. He closed the door behind him and exhaled, steadying himself. Good. What happened, she asked. He removed the soaked jacket, hanging it over the chair. Varn's behind it. He knows the file was restored. He can't delete it himself now, so he's going to discredit me first. What does that mean for us? It means we're on a timer, Kier said. Once the board reviews my account, they'll try to access my work logs. That gives us maybe 12 hours before they realize I'm using a shadow file. Her brow furrowed. You said the file would replicate automatically. It will, he said, but the replication queue runs through the dome's main servers. If they isolate it before the next cycle, it'll vanish again. She stepped closer. So we move it somewhere else. He looked at her, surprised. What? Move it, she repeated. Copy it to another registry. Somewhere Varn can't touch. He hesitated. That's not simple, Nyara. Every registry is monitored. You said once that people who stop expecting fairness let the system win, she said. So don't stop now. Her words hit him like a slow realization. She wasn't the same woman from the arcade anymore. The fear was still there, but layered under resolve. He nodded once. All right, we'll move it, but we need a terminal off the dome grid. There's one at the outer quay control hub. That's outside the resident zone, she said. I know, he said, pulling his jacket back on. We'll go after dark. Less patrols. You mean we? He stopped. You're not staying here alone again. Her jaw set. Then I'm coming. They didn't argue further. He packed 2 data drives, a portable transceiver, and a small cutter tool. When he looked up, she was already ready, wearing one of his spare coats, her hair tied back, her expression steady. Stay close to me, he said quietly. I have been, she said. They left the loft just after sunset. The rain had slowed to a fine mist, the city lights blurred in it. They walked through narrow corridors of metal and glass, down to the lower quays where the sea rose high against the docks. Kier moved like he used to during patrol missions, silent, scanning corners, reading shadows. Nyara followed without needing instruction. At the control hub, the doors were half open, flickering lights revealing rows of unused terminals. The place smelled of salt and ozone. Kier connected the portable drive to a terminal and began transferring the backup. Nyara stood by the door listening. Every creak in the metal made her tense. How long? She whispered. 2 minutes, he said. Something beeped, a proximity alert. Kier's head snapped up. A patrol drone drifted into view through the mist outside, scanning lights sweeping across the quay. He shut down the terminal mid-transfer, grabbing the drive. Move, he whispered. They slipped into the maintenance tunnel, the sound of the drone humming past behind them. Nyara pressed close, her breath fast against his shoulder. When they reached the second hatch, he stopped to catch his breath. Did it finish? She asked. Almost, he said, but enough. We've got the partial copy. They climbed up the narrow ladder back to the surface. The sky above Oraline Quay was a dull blue-gray, the glow of the dome faint in the distance. Kier looked back once, scanning the horizon. They're watching the terminals now, he said. We won't get another chance to move it digitally. The rest stays with us. Nyara looked at him, breath still uneven. What happens if they trace it here? He turned to her, rain dripping from his hair. Then they'll have to come through me first. The way he said it, flat, certain, made her believe it. They started walking again, side by side through the fog. The city stretched ahead, indifferent and bright. But under that cold light, something else had begun between them. Not just survival, but defiance, quiet and deliberate. By the time they reached Birthway 17, the tide was low. The wind carried the faint smell of seaweed and iron. Kier opened the door and ushered her inside. She turned to face him as he locked it behind them. Did we do it? She asked. For now, he said. We bought time. She nodded, tired but calm. Then that's enough for tonight. He exhaled, finally allowing himself to sit. She walked over, placed a hand on his shoulder, and squeezed once, simple grounding. We'll finish this, she said quietly. Together. He looked up at her, exhaustion and resolve written in equal measure. Together, he agreed. Outside, the harbor lights flickered across the water, and for the first time in days, Kier let himself believe they might actually win. By dawn, Oraline Quay was wrapped in silence. The fog had thickened overnight, swallowing the harbor lights until they glowed like pale embers. Inside the loft, the small heater hummed softly, pushing warm air into the chill. Kier sat at the desk, his back straight, but his hands unmoving on the keyboard. He'd been awake for hours. Across the room, Nyara slept on the narrow bed, her breathing shallow but steady. He studied her for a long moment. Even in sleep, she looked alert, one hand curled near the edge of the blanket as if expecting to be woken. He wished she didn't have to live like that. The city had made everyone too ready for loss. When she stirred and opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was him watching her. "You didn't sleep again," she said. "Didn't need to," he said quietly. She sat up, hair falling loose over her shoulders. "Liar." He almost smiled. "Half a liar." She stood, pulled his spare coat around her, and joined him at the table. On the screen, a single file glowed in standby mode. "That's it?" she asked. He nodded. The backup drive survived. The copy's stable, but incomplete. Some fragments corrupted during transfer. "Can you fix them?" He hesitated. "Maybe. I'd have to access a civic terminal. One still synced with the outer grid. Isn't that what nearly got you suspended?" "Exactly." She leaned against the table, crossing her arms. "Then don't use their system. Use mine." He blinked. "You don't have one." "Not officially," she said. "But I remember fragments, names, code, phrases, data caches from my old job. I worked in records too, here, before the trial, before the erasure. I know where they hide the secondary archives." He frowned slightly. "Why didn't you tell me that before?" "Because until last night, I wasn't sure you'd still be here in the morning." That hit harder than he expected. He turned away, pretending to study the file. But she could see it in his jaw. The guilt, the tiredness, the quiet worry that came from carrying too much responsibility for too long. "So," he said finally, "you know where to find another access point?" "Yes," she said. "A storage hub below the transit pier. It's not on the civic grid. It's for logistics, trade manifests, import logs. Nobody audits it." He exhaled slowly. "If we go there, we'll have to move during shift change. Less cameras, fewer patrols." "When?" He checked the time on the console. 90 minutes. She nodded once and turned toward the washroom. "Then I'll be ready." He watched her disappear behind the door. Something about the way she carried herself now, measured, self-assured, made him realize how far she'd come from the silent, trembling figure on the auction dais. When she emerged, she wore the storm linen shirt tucked into his utility pants, the coat belted at the waist. The look was functional, but it made his chest tighten for reasons that had nothing to do with strategy. "You're sure about this?" he asked. She fastened the collar. "I've been sure since the night you gave me a door that locked from my side." He didn't argue. He just nodded and checked the small drive, tucking it into the inner pocket of his jacket. Then he took her hand, firm, grounding. "Stay close. If anything feels wrong, we stop and reroute." "I trust you," she said simply. Those 3 words carried more weight than any oath. They left just before shift turnover. The air on the quay was cold, sharp with salt. Workers moved in tired lines under the pale sky, steam rising from the vents around their feet. Kier kept his head down, Nyara walking just behind him. Every so often, he glanced over his shoulder, not at her, but at the world watching. The pier stretched out ahead of them, slick with mist. Beneath the main platform, storage doors lined the underside like rusted ribs. They reached a narrow hatch marked Maintenance Access, authorized only. Kier keyed the lock manually, bypassing the civic scan. The door slid open with a hiss. Inside, the corridor was dim, lit only by old strips of yellow light. The hum of water pumps echoed from below. Nyara led the way this time, her steps sure. She stopped before a metal cabinet with a broken security tag. "This one," she said. "It connects to the registry backup net." Kier knelt, pulling out the portable drive. "If you're wrong, this whole system will light up like a beacon." She crouched beside him. "Then don't make mistakes." He glanced sideways at her and almost smiled. "Fair enough." They worked quickly. He linked the drive. She entered the access code she remembered. The system blinked twice, then came alive with a soft pulse. "Transfer ready," she said. He began uploading the file. The screen filled with cascading data, fragments of her history merging into the new shell. For a moment, everything looked smooth. Then the line of text froze. "Transfer interrupted," he muttered. "Something's blocking it." Nyara's hand moved over the panel. "It's not the system. It's external." A sound echoed down the corridor. Footsteps. Kier pulled the drive free and stood. They traced the signal faster than I thought. Nyara's pulse jumped. How many? He listened. One set. Slow. Confident. Then a familiar voice cut through the dim. You always did like breaking the rules, Arlen. Varn. Kier stepped in front of Nyara. You followed the trace yourself, he said. Of course, Varn replied, emerging from the shadows. I wanted to see what kind of fool you'd become. Harbor Registrar turned vigilante archivist. Nyara's jaw clenched. You erased me. Varn's eyes flicked toward her. You shouldn't even exist, Sorrel. You were a liability, a witness to corruption no one wanted to investigate. And now, Kier said, you plan to erase her again? Varn's thin smile widened. You think I need to? Once this conversation ends, I'll flag your ID as compromised. Everything you've done will collapse back into the system. She'll vanish again. So will you. Kier's voice hardened. Not this time. Varn took a slow step forward. You don't have proof. All you have is a corrupted backup. You think that's enough to fight an entire registry. Kier reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out the drive, and held it up. This is already in the backup hub. The moment I don't check in, it goes public. Varn hesitated. His smile faltered. You're bluffing. Try me, Kier said. For the first time, Varn looked uncertain. The silence stretched. Then, with a sharp breath, he turned and stepped back into the shadows. You won't win, he said. They never do. His footsteps faded. Nyara released a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. He's not gone for good, she said. No, Kier agreed. But he'll hesitate. And that's enough. He reconnected the drive, finished the transfer, and watched the screen flash green. Complete. Her name glowed on the display. Nyara Sorrel, witness status restored. She stared at it, voice unsteady. It's real. It's real, he said quietly. You're official again. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The hum of machinery filled the silence. Nyara reached out, touching his arm. You did it, she said. We did, he corrected. When they emerged from the tunnel, the fog had lifted. The sea gleamed silver under a pale sun. The city above still looked the same, cold, white, unfeeling. But for the first time, Nyara didn't feel invisible. They walked back toward Birthway 17 in silence. Halfway there, she stopped, turned to face him. What now? He looked at her for a long moment. Now you choose what happens next. She smiled, small but certain. Then I choose to stay. He nodded once, the smallest of smiles returning. Then we'll make it official. They continued walking as the morning light broke across the harbor, the sound of waves following them. The system hadn't changed. The city hadn't softened. But something within both of them had, something that made every breath, every small victory feel like defiance. For the first time in years, Kier allowed himself to believe that maybe discipline and compassion together could still rewrite the rules. The next few days passed without alarms, without visitors, without the sharp knock of authority on the door. Oraline Quay went on with its usual precision. Ships docking, cargo shuttles humming, civilians walking in perfect lines under the sterile light. Inside Birthway 17, though, life had shifted. For the first time since either of them could remember, the silence in the small loft felt peaceful, not fearful. Kier woke early as always, grounding himself in habit. Coffee on the stove, tide maps folded, logs checked. He looked out the window at the soft reflection of morning on the harbor glass, trying to accept that calm was real and not another pause before the next fight. Behind him, he heard light footsteps. Nyara had just risen from bed, wearing the same storm linen shirt and his belt around her waist. Her hair glowed deep copper red in the weak sun, her skin that distinct sea green hue of her race, the Sarenborn, a coastal alien species known for their adaptability to saline air and aquatic climates. Their bodies regulated temperature faster than humans. Their eyes shifted color with emotion, from bright jade to deep moss. Hers now held a quiet, wondering tone somewhere in between. She came up beside him, resting one hand on his shoulder. You've been awake since before light again, she said, her voice still husky from sleep. He nodded. Couldn't rest. Habit dies slow. Or maybe you don't want to die, she said softly. He didn't answer. Instead, he He poured her a cup of Froland seed coffee, the aroma bitter and rich, and handed it to her. She smiled faintly, but her expression changed halfway through the sip. A hand went to her mouth, sudden and sharp. She turned away, setting the cup down quickly. He frowned. "You okay?" She shook her head once, closing her eyes as another wave hit. "Just give me a second." He moved closer, steadying her arm. "Sit," he said, guiding her to the chair. She pressed her palms against the table, breathing slow. "It's strange," she murmured. "It started last night. I thought it was nothing, maybe nerves, but..." She stopped, her voice faltering as realization dawned. Her hand dropped instinctively to her abdomen. Kier's eyes followed the movement, his voice careful. "Nyara." She looked up at him, her lips parted, eyes wide and wet. "Kier, I think I'm pregnant." The room fell still. Outside, a cargo lift rumbled across the quay. Then the world went quiet again, leaving only the sound of the wind against the window. He crouched beside her, searching her face. "You're sure?" "I can feel it," she said, her voice shaking slightly but steadying as she spoke. "We Saren can tell early. The cells change our body temperature almost instantly. It's instinct. It's life recognizing itself." He reached for her hand. It was warm, trembling. "Then it's true." She nodded, eyes lowering. "I didn't think this could happen. Not between our species." Kier stayed silent for a long moment. Then, finally, he said, "We've already broken every other rule. Why not one more?" A laugh escaped her, half shock, half relief. "You don't even seem surprised." "I've seen stranger miracles on worse days," he said, a trace of a smile pulling at his mouth. Then the smile faded into something gentler. "You're sure you're okay?" She nodded, still dazed. "Just tired. It feels like something in me woke up, like my body's finally allowed to exist." He stood, kissed the top of her head, then turned toward the small cupboard. "You should eat something. Salt will help with the nausea." "You sound like a medic," she said. "Scout training," he said, cracking open a tin of reef fish and slicing warm flatbread. "We learned to handle everything from hunger to childbirth in zero gravity." That earned him a raised eyebrow. "Let's hope this one's simpler." He placed the plate before her and watched her eat in small, careful bites. When she finished, she leaned back, hand still on her abdomen. "What happens now?" she asked quietly. "When a city finds out." "They won't," he said, matter of fact. "Not yet. Your registry status protects you. And by the time anyone looks close enough to question biology, your file will already be duplicated on every off-world backup." She studied his face for a long time. "You always plan 5 moves ahead." "That's how I stay alive," he said. "And how we will," she said. He gave a small nod, but his gaze softened when he looked at her again. "You don't regret it?" Her expression changed. No hesitation, only quiet certainty. "No, this is the first thing in my life that feels like it wasn't stolen or given out of pity." He reached across the table and took her hand again. "Then it's ours." They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the fog began to lift, revealing streaks of silver ocean stretching to the horizon. From the docks below, workers' voices echoed faintly, ordinary and distant. The world kept turning, unaware of how much had changed in one small loft above the quay. Later that morning, Kier opened a new document on his terminal. No encryption, no subfolders, no hidden tags. Just a clean page. He typed a title, Family File, Birthway 17. Then he entered 2 names. Kier Arlen, Nyara Sorrel. Pending edition 1. Nyara stood behind him, watching. "You're registering it?" He looked up at her. Not officially, just acknowledging it. She smiled, eyes bright with quiet tears. "Then it's real." "It's real," he said. He reached for her hand, placing it over his. Together, they pressed the confirm key. The file saved with a soft tone, a simple sound. Yet in that sterile, indifferent city, it felt like the loudest declaration possible. That evening, they stood on the narrow balcony overlooking the harbor. The sun dipped low, painting the glass towers in faint amber. Nyara leaned into him, her head resting against his shoulder. His arm wrapped around her waist, protective but relaxed. For once, Neither of them spoke about codes or audits or risks. When the first lights flickered on across the water, she whispered, "Do you ever think about leaving Oraline? About going somewhere quieter?" He nodded slightly. "Sometimes. But I think what matters isn't where we go. It's who's there when we stop running." She smiled, tracing the edge of his sleeve. "Then wherever we are, that's home." He turned toward her, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and kissed her slowly, without hurry, the way a man does when he knows he doesn't need to prove anything anymore. Below them, the tide shifted with the coming night, waves touching the pylons and retreating again. The city hummed above, still blind to the small victory that had taken place within its walls. Inside, the heater clicked off, leaving only the rhythm of water and the quiet pulse of two hearts moving in time. For the first time in years, Keir didn't feel like a man cleaning up someone else's mess. He felt like part of something new, a beginning written in flesh and warmth instead of code. And as Nyara's hand moved gently over her abdomen, she closed her eyes and whispered, "You'll never be erased. None of us will." Outside, the fog cleared completely, and the lights of Oraline Quay reflected in the water, brighter now, as if the city itself had made room for one more story that refused to vanish.